You ever driven through a tunnel and wondered, what's stopping this entire mountain from just collapsing on top of me? Well, deep underground, there's a fascinating battle of engineering ideas happening every single day. It's a showdown between two major philosophies, the Austrian way and the Norwegian way. So, how do they do it? Let's dig in.
Yeah, that's really the fundamental question, isn't it? The second you carve a hole into the earth, the incredible weight of all that rock and dirt immediately wants to squeeze it shut. So how in the world do you hold back literally millions of tons of earth? Well, it turns out there are two very, very different answers.
So, on one hand, you've got the Austrian philosophy. Their idea is to be flexible. Work with the ground, let it shift and settle a bit to ease the pressure, and then you build your support. On the other hand, you've got the Norwegian idea, which is all about strength. They look at the rock not as a problem, but as the solution. They say, let's just nail the rock together and make it the structure.
Okay, before we get into the nitty-gritty of the methods, you gotta understand the opponent here, and that's the ground itself. It's not just sitting there. It's an active, powerful force that's constantly pushing, squeezing, and trying to take back any empty space you create. Now, what's interesting is that both methods often start out looking pretty similar. They drill holes, stuff them with explosives, and boom, you've got the beginnings of a tunnel. But that's pretty much where the similarities end. It's what happens in those crucial moments right after the blast that completely changes the game.
All right, so let's start our journey in the Alps. The Austrian method was born out of necessity, really. The rock there can be complex and, frankly, pretty weak sometimes. So their whole approach is about observation, about adapting to what the mountain gives them.
It's called the New Austrian Tunneling Method, or NATM for short. And if you're going to remember one thing about it, remember this phrase, double shell. Just think of it like building a tunnel inside of another tunnel, leaving a bit of space between your final structure and all that unpredictable rock.
Okay, now this is the really clever part. NAT doesn't try to fight the mountain head-on. No, instead, it lets the ground move just a little bit. I know, it sounds terrifying, right? But it's all controlled. By allowing that tiny bit of deformation, the rock mass around the tunnel actually settles and forms its own natural supportive arch. It's kind of like rolling with the punch instead of trying to block it.
So here's how they pull it off. First, they only dig out a small section at a time. Immediately after, bam, they spray on a thin, flexible layer of concrete, that's called shotcrete, and add some rock bolts. Then comes the most important part. They watch. They use super sensitive instruments to monitor exactly how the ground is moving. And only after it's settled down and stabilized do they go back in and build that final, permanent, rigid concrete shell.
So where would you use a careful method like this? Well, it's perfect for when the ground is unpredictable. Think soft soils, clays, crumbly rock that likes to squeeze. It's also fantastic for creating complex, non-circular shapes, which is exactly why you see it used for huge subway stations deep underneath cities like London and Munich.
Now let's head way up north to Scandinavia. This is a land of ancient, super strong granite. It's a totally different ballgame. And for this kind of rock, the engineers there developed a method that's faster, cheaper, and just brilliantly simple, but only if you have the right rock.
This is the Norwegian tunneling method, or NTM. And if NATM is all about the double shell, then NTM is proudly single shell. That's it. There is no second inner lining. The support system they install right after the blast is the final tunnel structure. The thinking here is a complete 180 from the Austrians. NTM engineers don't see the rock as a load that needs to be held back. No, they see it as the primary building material. The whole goal is to essentially stitch the rock mass together with bolts and a layer of shotcrete, locking all the natural blocks of rock so tightly that the mountain itself becomes the permanent, self-supporting tunnel.
NTM has some really cool features. They use what's called fiber-reinforced shotcrete. That's just the spray on concrete, but with tiny steel fibers already mixed in. It makes it super strong and really fast to apply. And the design is based on this brilliant method called the Q system, where geologists literally grade the quality of the rock, and a chart tells the engineers exactly what kind of support they need. It's an incredibly systematic approach that's perfect for good, solid rock.
So there we have it, two totally different philosophies. You've got Austria's flexible, watch-and-wait approach versus Norway's strong, systematic one. Let's put them right next to each other and see how they stack up.
This table really sums it up nicely. For philosophy, you've got double shell versus single shell. For geology, NATM is for weak ground, NTM is for hard rock. The design basis? NATM is observational. You design as you go. NTM is empirical. You design based on the rock grade before you even start. An excavation style. NATM often works in small, careful steps, while NTM can just blast the whole tunnel face at once.
And all those differences? Well, they lead directly to the bottom line, because NTM gets to skip that whole second concrete lining, and the process is so systematic, it's generally much, much cheaper. I mean, in the right rock conditions, it can be up to 50% less expensive than NATM. That's a huge deal.
And that massive cost saving is directly tied to this: pure speed. When you can blast the entire face of the tunnel at once and only apply a single permanent layer of support, you're just going to move way faster than the careful step-by-step observational approach of NAT.
So after all that, which one is actually better? Is it the adaptive Austrian method or the powerful Norwegian one?
Well, asking which method wins is kind of like asking if a hammer is better than a screwdriver. The answer, of course, is that it totally depends on what you're trying to do. It's all about using the right tool for the job.
And this right here is the ultimate takeaway. You pick the Austrian method, NATM, when you're facing the unknown. When you have weak, squeezing ground, and safety and flexibility are your absolute top priorities. But you pick the Norwegian method, NTM, when you're on solid ground, good hard rock, and your main goals are speed and saving money.
So the next time you drive through a tunnel, take a second and really look at the walls. And ask yourself, am I sitting inside a thick, man-made concrete tube that's shielding me from the mountain? Or is the mountain itself, expertly stitched together, the very thing that's holding itself up? It's a hidden battle of engineering, won every time by picking the right philosophy for the rock.